since the beginning of time. This is what comes to mind when I think of the word abortion. Sinner, baby killer, murderer. This is what comes to the minds of 37% of Americans when apprehended with the same word, according to Pew's Research Center, Public Opinion on Abortion. Then there's saving grace, second chance, and lifesaver. These are some of the words that come to millions of women's minds who have previously had abortions, a word that is now even a taboo to use in our society. People all over America have many different opinions on this one very controversial topic. The nation's stance on this topic has already been decided, however. According to Lee Epstein, who wrote the Constitutional Law for Changing America, this explains that in 1973, abortion was deemed legal through Roe v. Wade. So why, nearly 50 years later, have certain states decided to overturn this Supreme Court justice ruling? And why is our judicial system so lenient upon them? The most state in the public's eye and the most opposing abortion in the moment and for several years is Alabama. According to Guttmacher Institute, since the passing of Roe v. Wade, the funding for abortion has been declining in Alabama constantly for years and decades. In 2014, the fetal heartbeat law was also passed. That can be explained by Lee Epstein. And then currently, in 2019, the Alabama Life Protection Act has been passed. I have personally been a supporter of the Pro-Choice Act for almost a decade. I have done many hours of research on this topic, as well as had an abortion myself. Since the passing of Roe v. Wade, the number of abortion offices in Alabama has dwindled. And nearly 35 years ago, there were 45 abortion clinics in Alabama, and at the beginning of this year, there were only 2. Dozens of bans and different laws have been enacted in Alabama considering who can get an abortion, in what terms, legal ages, and what steps must be taken in order to do this procedure. Did you know that you could walk into a gun store and with the right paperwork you could buy a firearm with no other questions? But if you wanted to get rid of a clump of cell in your uterus, it would take a lot more planning. You must get an ultrasound, you must have a mandated court session of counseling, you must wait at least 48 hours before you can make this decision. The government that we have questions our decision-making skills. A weapon that could potentially cause mass harm is less considered than a decision that affects one woman. All of these things are perfectly fine in terms of time and money, which are one and the same, but when it comes to public funding, it is restricted to those with life-threatening complications and instances of rape and incest. Although extremely appreciated, this has not been enough. More steps have been added, but the funding has been cutting. Something doesn't add up. It's almost as if the state doesn't want people to have abortions at all. This is proved in 2014 with the passing of the Fetal Heartbeat Act. In almost all cases, abortions were made impossible. Epstein explains that in 2014, Alabama passed the Fetal Heartbeat Law. This stated that abortions could not be had after a fetus had an active heartbeat. The Fetal Heartbeat Law made it nearly impossible for women to have abortions. The heartbeat of a fetus begins as early as 6 weeks. Although 2 months sounds like a long time, and this is according to the Alabama Human Protection Act. 2 months seems like a long time, but when considering that it takes almost 5 weeks for someone to understand that they're pregnant, and it takes more than just 1 week to get the funding and appointment and all the steps taken before an abortion can be done, it is nearly impossible for women to have one under this act. A heartbeat has been deemed the beginning of human life, but according to the American Journal of Public Health article on abortion by R.K. Jones, this stage isn't when consciousness development has even occurred. It is legal to determine that someone could be taken off life support after living a full life and after having many accomplishments and knowing many people if their heart is still beating, even if they have brain damage, that causes them to be less active in their brainstem. But it is frowned upon when deciding to get rid of a clump of cells in a woman's uterus. It was not enough for the state to rid Alabama to very strict regulations and restrict abortions. They are now attempting to ban it altogether. On May 15, 2019, Governor Kay Ivey passed the Alabama Human Life Protection Act. The act determined that it would criminalize any abortions being had throughout the entire state, with the sole exception of life-threatening complications. This gave no provisions for incest or for rape. Arliss Foley recently read an article for The Hill that speaks of Ohio and an 11-year-old girl who was forced to carry a pregnancy to term because her state does not allow abortions for any reason concerning incest. She was forced by a relative to have this child as well as her own state. The Alabama Human Life Protection Act contains comparisons of many casualties, so I would like to make some comparisons of my own. Freakonomics, a book of cause and effect written by Stephen Levitt, outlines how crime rates dropped in the 1990s due to the passing of Roe v. Wade in the 1970s. When children that would have been born in the 1970s were been in prime crime age in the 1990s, they weren't there because women with neglect, destitute, and abuse no longer were forced to have their child without will. Tens of thousands of children that grew up that were never born did not grow up to be criminals, and thus the crime rate dropped dramatically. It is no secret that the population of our planet is becoming increasingly high. Our current population is pushing 7.7 billion, and studies by Joel Cohen outline that in his book, How Many People in This Earth support that the Earth cannot contain more than 10 billion people. The Alabama Human Life Act estimates that over 50 million abortions have been had, and due to this, our population could be pushing 8 billion right now if they had not been had. Alabama wants to pretend like abortion is equivalent to homicide, as depicted in the Alabama Life Protection Act. I once saw a comment by our President Donald Trump that said that people who get abortions should be punished, and he is not the only one. According to Jones and German, approximately 1 out of 4 women will have an abortion by the age of 45. This means that 12.5% of our population could be murderers in the eyes of these people. It also makes you wonder if a fetus is the same as a newborn child. Why are mass amounts of money and research being poured into miscarriages which consume 20% of all pregnancies, according to the Mayo Medical Research Foundation? The idea that they are the same reeks of ignorance, misogyny, and chauvinism. Without error, someone will always compare abortion to murder, as if every woman doing what's best for her body is comparable to Dahmer, Gacy, or Bundy. Situations like rape, abuse, and unwanted pregnancies happen to women all over the world, and they all must ask themselves these questions. Abortion is not a public platform for our politicians to decide upon. It is a humane choice that is not about murder, yet sustainability. Alabama, I see you living in a time that you have not caught up with. Governor Kay Ivey, I see you not standing with the women who you should support. You both disgust me. An opinion is just that, an opinion, and it does not overturn a 50-year-old court justice ruling. Opinions may be voiced, but choices made for masses in basis of opinion are also comparable to the infringement of rights. We have fought this before and we have won. Help us win again.